Hey everyone. Thanks for clicking. My name is Joshua. I'm 29 years old, and my own parents and brother tried to ruin the most important day of my life. Before I tell you about the moment my father-in-law stood up and brought my brother's entire world crashing down with a single sentence, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It's always amazing to see how far these stories can travel. It all came to a head with a phone call, just 3 weeks before my wedding. The screen lit up with my mother's name. I felt that familiar, dull ache in my stomach, the one I'd had since I was a kid. I answered. "Joshua," she said, her voice breezy, like she was talking about the weather. "Just calling to let you know, your father and I have made a decision. We'll be attending Ethan's wedding, of course. It's just, well, he's the firstborn, you understand. It's more traditional." I leaned against the kitchen counter, the cold marble seeping through my shirt. My fiancée, Clara, looked at me from across the room, her smile fading as she saw my face. "I understand," I said. The words were quiet, steady. I was surprised at how calm I sounded. Years of practice, I guess. "Oh, good," she said, relieved. "We just felt so terrible about the clash. What a crazy coincidence. Their dates ending up on the same day as yours. We'll try to pop over to your little event afterward if we have time. No promises." I didn't say anything. I just listened to the hollow space on the line. "Well, I have to go," she chirped. "Lots to do for Ethan's big day. Love you." The line went dead. I slowly lowered the phone. They chose him. Of course they did. They had always chosen him. But what my mother, my father, and my golden boy brother Ethan didn't know was that their choice was the final piece of a puzzle I had been putting together for months. Their coincidence wasn't a coincidence at all, and my little event was about to change everything. I looked up at Clara. Her eyes were filled with a fierce, protective light. She walked over and took my hand, her grip firm and warm. "It's okay," I told her, and for the first time I meant it. "Everything is going exactly as planned. But to understand the plan, you have to understand the pain." And that started long before any wedding was on the horizon. It started when I was a kid, growing up in the shadow of a brother who was born shining, while I was apparently born to be invisible. Let's go back a bit. The story really begins on a Tuesday evening, 6 months earlier, when the woman I loved more than anything looked at me across a candlelit table and changed my life. Only it wasn't me asking the question. It was her. Clara and I had been together for 3 years. 3 years of feeling seen, of feeling like I was more than enough. We were at our favorite little Italian place, the kind with checkered tablecloths and Chianti bottles for candle holders. I was rambling on about a coding problem at work when she suddenly put her hand over mine, silencing me. "Joshua," she said, her voice soft but serious. "I love you." "I love you too," I said, my heart doing a little flip. She took a deep breath. "I know things are supposed to happen a certain way. The guy is supposed to do this part. But I also know you. I know you overthink everything because you're always worried you're not worthy of good things." My throat tightened. She saw right through me. She slid her other hand into her purse and pulled out a small, simple box. Not a ring box, but a beautiful wooden one. She opened it. Inside, nestled on a black velvet cushion, was a stunning classic watch. "Joshua," she said, her eyes locked on mine, "I don't want to spend my life with anyone else. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in my eyes, not just of joy, but of a profound, overwhelming relief. Someone chose me. Someone saw all my broken pieces and didn't just accept them. She loved them. I could barely speak. I just nodded, a huge, goofy grin spreading across my face as she slid the watch onto my wrist. "Yes," I finally managed to say. 1,000 times, yes. The happiness was so pure, so bright, it almost hurt. But as we left the restaurant, walking hand in hand through the cool night air, a familiar darkness began to creep in at the edges of my joy. The inevitable next step, telling our families. Telling her parents was a dream. Her father, Mr. Harrison, was a warm, imposing man with a handshake that could crush walnuts. He pulled me into a hug that lifted me off the ground and boomed, "Welcome to the family, son." Her mother, a woman of incredible grace, kissed my cheek and told me she'd always hoped I'd be the one. They were a family, a real one. Then Mr. Harrison clapped me on the shoulder. "Well, we have to meet your parents. We'll have to get everyone together for a proper celebration dinner." And just like that, the darkness I'd been pushing away flooded in. My parents, my brother. The thought of it made my stomach churn. Growing up, our house was a stage and my older brother, Ethan, was the star. He was 2 years older, effortlessly charming, athletic, and handsome. He was the sun, and I was the little planet that quietly orbited him, perpetually in his shadow. Our family photo albums were a testament to this. Page after page of Ethan hitting a home run, Ethan with a debate trophy, Ethan smiling with our proud parents. And there I'd be, in the corner of a shot, out of focus or sometimes not there at all. I remember one Christmas when I was about 9. All I wanted was this big Lego space station set. I'd circled it in the Toys R Us catalog for months. On Christmas morning, I tore open my presents, but it wasn't there. Instead, I got some hand-me-down clothes that were too big and a book. Then Ethan opened his last gift. It was the Lego space station. "We knew you'd love it, sweetie," my mother cooed. "You're so good at building things." He wasn't. He'd get bored and smash things. I was the one who would spend hours patiently putting models together. I looked at my dad, my eyes pleading. He just shrugged. "Your brother's older, Joshua. He gets first pick. You know the rules." Ethan ripped the box open, dumped the pieces on the floor, and started clicking a few together before getting frustrated. "This is stupid," he declared after 5 minutes, and kicked the pile, sending plastic bricks scattering under the sofa. Later that night, long after everyone was asleep, I crept downstairs and started building it myself, piece by piece, in the quiet dark. The next morning, when he saw the completed station, he claimed he'd finished it. My parents praised his genius. I never said a word. That was my role. The silent, invisible stagehand in the grand production of Ethan's perfect life. That pattern continued all through our school years. Ethan was the popular jock, the life of the party. I was the quiet, nerdy kid who got straight A's. You'd think that would be something for my parents to be proud of, right? Wrong. To them, my academic success was just weird. It was another way I failed to be like Ethan. "Don't be a show-off, Joshua," my father would say when I brought home a perfect report card. "Nobody likes a no at all." Meanwhile, Ethan would scrape by with C's, and they'd throw a party. "He's got charisma," my dad would boast to our relatives. "That's what matters in the real world, not books." The final nail in the coffin of my childhood came in my senior year of high school. I worked my tail off. I was the valedictorian. I got a scholarship offer from a prestigious out-of-state university to study computer engineering. It was my ticket out, my chance to finally be seen for who I was, not for who I wasn't. I remember running into the house, waving the acceptance letter, my heart pounding with a hope I hadn't felt in years. My parents were in the living room watching TV. I stood in front of the screen, breathless. I got in. I got the scholarship. My mother took the letter and glanced at it. "Oh, that's nice, dear." My father didn't even look up. "How much does it cover?" "About 75%, I said, my voice trembling with excitement. "I can work to cover the rest, or take out a small loan." He finally looked at me, his face a mask of annoyance. "A loan? Are you insane? We're not co-signing anything. And we don't have money to throw away on this." "But you set up a college fund for us?" I stammered, confused. "That college fund," my father said, his voice dangerously low, "is for your brother. He's going to business school at the state university. He needs a good start to build his career, to make connections. We're not wasting it on some pipe dream of yours halfway across the country." The words hit me like a physical blow. Couldn't breathe. "But my grades, the scholarship. We've wasted enough money on you, Joshua," my mother said, not unkindly, but with a finality that was worse than anger. "Ethan is the investment. It's time you started pulling your own weight. Get a job." I stood there, The letter crumpled in my fist, the world shrinking down to that single, soul-crushing moment. They weren't just denying me an education. They were telling me, in no uncertain terms, that I was worthless. That my dreams, my hard work, my entire existence, was less valuable than my brother's C-average charisma. That was the day the last bit of love I had for them died. It was replaced by something cold and hard. Resolve. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I walked up to my room, packed a bag, and left. I was lucky. My high school computer science teacher, Mr. Evans, had always seen something in me. He had a brother-in-law who ran a small tech startup. He made a call. I got an entry-level job doing basic IT work. It wasn't glamorous. The salary was barely enough to live on. But it was mine. It was my escape. For the next 9 years I worked. I learned. I clawed my way up, promotion by promotion. And I never, ever asked my family for a single thing. So when Clara held my hand, her eyes full of love and excitement about our future, I knew I had to tell her everything. Not just the highlights, but the ugly, painful truth of it all. We sat in her apartment that night, and for the first time I let it all out. The Lego set, the report cards, the stolen college fund, the crushing weight of being the family disappointment. I told her why the thought of our families meeting filled me with a cold, sickening dread. I finished my story, my voice hoarse, half expecting her to look at me with pity, or worse, to see me as damaged goods. But she didn't. She just listened, her expression unreadable. When I was done, a long silence hung in the air. Then she spoke, her voice thick with an emotion I couldn't quite place. "Those people," she said slowly, "are not your family. They are your relatives. Your family is right here." And she put her hand on my chest, right over my heart. "And soon," she added, her eyes shining, "it's going to be my family too, and we will protect you." In that moment, I understood what it felt like to be truly loved. It wasn't about grand gestures. It was about someone seeing your deepest wounds and choosing to stand guard over them. The dinner with her parents was a revelation. I was braced for an interrogation, for judgment. Instead, I found acceptance. Mrs. Harrison, after hearing a heavily sanitized version of my past, simply patted my arm and said, "Well, their loss is our gain." But it was Mr. Harrison who truly surprised me. He was a man who radiated power and success, the kind of man my father always tried, and failed, to be. After dinner, he asked me to join him in his study. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. The grilling. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed one to me. He gestured for me to sit in a plush leather armchair opposite his desk. "Joshua," he began, his voice a low rumble. "Clara told me a little about your background. Not the details, just that things have been difficult." I nodded, not knowing what to say. "I'm not a man who cares about where someone comes from," he continued, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "I care about who they are. For 3 years, I've watched you treat my daughter with a respect and kindness that every father hopes for. I've seen you work your way up from nothing in a competitive field based on pure talent and grit. You, son, are a self-made man, and there is nothing in this world I respect more than that." He raised his glass. "To my future son-in-law." I raised mine, my hand trembling slightly. For the first time in my life, a father figure was looking at me with pride. It was a feeling so foreign, so powerful. It almost brought me to my knees. I left their house that night feeling 10 feet tall. I had a family now, a real one. And with them by my side, I felt like I could finally face the ghosts of my past. I just didn't realize those ghosts were about to materialize in the most destructive way possible. The night of the big family meeting arrived a week later. Clara, knowing how stressed I was, had booked a private room at a high-end steakhouse. It was neutral territory, elegant and quiet, a place, I hoped, that might inspire some semblance of civilized behavior from my family. I was a fool to be so optimistic. The Harrisons arrived first, right on time, impeccably dressed and carrying a beautiful bouquet of flowers for my mother. Clara and I greeted them, the 4 of us making pleasant small talk. Then, 20 minutes late, my family blew in like a Category 4 hurricane. My father, Richard, was wearing a stained polo shirt. My mother, Eleanor, had on a gaudy track suit that looked like it had been bought from a discount store. And Ethan was in his element. He strode in wearing a designer shirt unbuttoned one too many times, a smug grin plastered on his face as he surveyed the expensive decor. "Wow, Josh," Ethan said loudly, clapping me on the back hard enough to make me stumble. "Finally managed to find a girl who can pay for a decent meal." "Huh?" I gritted my teeth. Mr. Harrison's smile tightened just a fraction. "Richard, Eleanor, it's a pleasure to finally meet you," Mr. Harrison said, extending his hand. My father gave it a limp shake, his eyes already scanning the menu. "Yeah, you too. Let's get some food ordered. I'm starving." The dinner was, without a doubt, the most excruciating 2 hours of my life. My parents and Ethan ignored every attempt at conversation from the Harrisons. They spoke only to each other, and usually with their mouths full. They complained about the portion sizes. They argued over who got the last bread roll. My mother, Eleanor, actually pulled out a calculator to estimate the cost of the meal, whistling loudly and saying, "You're really splurging on my boy, huh?" Clara's parents were masters of diplomacy, trying to steer the conversation toward neutral topics. "So, Ethan," Mrs. Harrison said with a polite smile, "Joshua tells us you work in finance." Ethan leaned back, puffing out his chest. "Yeah, big shot investment banking. It's a killer market, but I'm on the fast track. Looking at a huge promotion to director soon. The salary bump is gonna be insane. You probably wouldn't understand. It's a pretty high-pressure world." He waved a dismissive hand, as if talking to a child. I watched Mr. Harrison, a man who ran a multi-billion-dollar financial corporation, just nod slowly, a strange, unreadable expression on his face. "Is that so?" he said quietly. The final humiliation came with the main course. The waiter placed a beautiful, perfectly cooked filet mignon in front of my father. He took one bite, chewed loudly, and then spat it out onto the side of his plate. "It's bloody raw," he bellowed, waving the waiter over. "What kind of fancy dump is this? Take it back and cook it until it's dead." I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. I could feel the heat rising in my face, a burning shame that was all too familiar. I risked a glance at Clara. She wasn't looking at me with pity. She was looking at my family with cold, hard fury. And in her eyes, I saw my own decision reflected back at me. This ends now. Just when I thought the evening couldn't possibly get any worse, Ethan decided to reclaim the spotlight. "So, speaking of big news," he announced, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. He reached under the table and pulled a young woman into the seat beside him. She must have slipped in while my father was causing the scene with his steak. She was beautiful, in a sharp, glossy way, with perfect hair and a dress that cost more than my first car. "Everyone," Ethan beamed. "This is my girlfriend, Sophia. Well, fiancée, actually." He grabbed her hand and flashed a massive diamond ring. "I asked her to marry me this morning." My parents erupted. My mother shrieked with delight, jumping up to hug Sophia. My father clapped Ethan on the back, all complaints about his overcooked steak forgotten. "That's my boy. I knew you'd land a keeper." Clara and I exchanged a look. The timing was suspicious. "Congratulations," Clara said, her voice perfectly even. "That's wonderful news." Sophia gave her a smile that was all teeth. "Thank you. It was all so sudden. When Ethan told me you two were getting married, I just thought, why wait? Life's too short, you know?" She looked Clara up and down, her eyes lingering for a moment on Clara's simple, elegant engagement ring before flicking back to her own enormous rock. The message was clear. The rest of the dinner was the Ethan and Sophia show. We heard all about their whirlwind romance, their plans for a lavish wedding, and the influential family Sophia came from. Her father apparently owned a chain of luxury car dealerships. My parents were practically drooling. This was the daughter-in-law they had always dreamed of, wealthy, showy, and a perfect accessory for their golden son. They completely ignored Clara. It was as if she didn't exist. At one point, Eleanor even leaned across the table and said to Sophia, "You'll have to give me your father's contact information. Richard has been thinking about upgrading his car. Maybe we can get a family discount now." I felt Clara tense beside me. That was it. I stood up. "I think we should call it a night," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Everyone looked at me, surprised I'd spoken. "Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, for a lovely dinner. It was a pleasure." I looked pointedly at my family. It was an evening. Mr. Harrison stood as well, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Joshua is right. It's getting late." As we were leaving, Sophia pulled me aside for a moment, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Hey, I'm so excited to be sisters-in-law. We should totally do some wedding planning together. I'd love to hear about your, plans." The way she said plans was laced with a condescending pity that made my skin crawl. It was the tone people use when they ask about your community college certificate when they have a PhD from Harvard. "We're keeping things simple," I said, pulling away. "Oh, I'm sure," she said with that bright, fake smile. "Well, can't wait to see it." As I watched them leave, Ethan with his arms slung possessively around Sophia, and my parents fawning over her, I had a sinking feeling. This wasn't just a surprise announcement. This was a declaration of war, and I was just beginning to understand the battlefield. The first shot was fired 3 days later. My phone rang. It was Ethan. "Hey, little bro," he said, his voice dripping with false cheer. "Got some amazing news. Sophia and I set our date." "Okay," I said, bracing myself. "Yeah, we found the most incredible venue, but they're booked solid for years. Except for one cancellation. Can you believe our luck? It's in October. October 14th. I froze. October 14th. My wedding day. The date Clara and I had sent out on our save the date cards 6 weeks ago. What a crazy coincidence, right? He laughed. There was no humor in it. It was the sound of a predator enjoying its kill. I mean, what are the odds? We were just so locked into that venue we had to take it. You don't mind, do you? I didn't answer. Couldn't. The sheer, calculated cruelty of it stole the air from my lungs. "Anyway," he continued, "just wanted to give you a heads up. Talk soon." He hung up. I stood there, phone in my hand, my knuckles white. Coincidence. He had the audacity to call it a coincidence. Before I could even process the rage, my phone rang again. This time it was my mother. Her call was the one I detailed at the start of this story. "We'll be attending Ethan's wedding, of course. He's the firstborn, you understand. We'll try to pop over to your little event afterward, if we have time." That was it. The final, unforgivable betrayal. It wasn't just that they chose him. It was the casual, dismissive way they did it. My wedding, the most important day of my life, was reduced to a little event they might pop over to. The culmination of a lifetime of being told I was second best. An afterthought. When I hung up, a strange calm washed over me. The hurt was still there, a deep, cold stone in my gut. But the anger had burned away, leaving behind something clean and hard as steel. Purpose. I walked into the living room where Clara was on her laptop, looking at flower arrangements. She saw my face and her own fell. "They did it, didn't they?" she whispered. I nodded. "Ethan's wedding is October 14th, and my parents just called to confirm they'll be attending his." I watched as a storm of emotions crossed her face, fury, disbelief, and then a slow, dangerous smile. She closed her laptop. "Okay," she said, her voice firm. "Forget the flowers. Forget the budget. Forget the small, intimate wedding we talked about." She stood up and walked over to me, taking both of my hands in hers. Her eyes were blazing. "Your father-in-law," she said, a new and thrilling emphasis on the words, "owns one of the most successful event planning subsidiaries in the state. We're not going to have a little event, Joshua. We're going to have a wedding that will be remembered. We're going to give them a front row seat to the biggest mistake of their lives." And in that moment, I let go of the last shred of hope that my family would ever change. I let go of the need for their approval. I had a new family now, and we weren't just planning a wedding anymore. We were planning a reckoning. The next 3 months were a blur of clandestine operations. We became wedding commandos, operating in total secrecy. The first rule of our new plan was a complete information blackout. My family was put on a strict no-contact list. Their calls went to voicemail. Their texts were left unread. When Sophia, true to her word, sent a series of cloying texts asking for planning updates, Clara would reply with vague, one-word answers. "How's the venue search?" she'd ask. "Fine," Clara would reply. "Found a dress yet?" "Yep." It drove them crazy. I heard through my Uncle David, my dad's younger brother and the only person in the family who ever showed me an ounce of kindness, that my mother was complaining to everyone who would listen. "I don't understand why Joshua is being so secretive. It's probably because he's embarrassed. I bet they're just doing something small in a backyard. Let them think that." It was perfect. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the Harrison machine was in full motion. Clara was right. Her father didn't just know people, he owned the company. He put his top planner, a formidable woman named Evelyn, on our case. Our initial budget was ceremoniously shredded. "The budget," Mr. Harrison announced at our first meeting in a sleek boardroom, "is to make my daughter happy and to show Joshua the respect he deserves. That's the only line item." Our little event was now slated to be held in the grand ballroom of the St. Regis Hotel, a place synonymous with old-world luxury. It was a venue so exclusive you usually had to book it years in advance. But when Mr. Harrison called, a fortuitous opening miraculously appeared. The guest list was the next phase of the operation. Our original list of 50 close friends and family was scrapped. Evelyn and Mrs. Harrison went to work. The new list swelled to 300. It included all of Clara's extended family, their network of friends, and, most importantly, a curated selection of Mr. Harrison's business associates. "I've invited a few key people from my company," he told me one evening as we reviewed the seating chart. He tapped a name on the list. "And some board members. And our primary legal counsel. It'll be good for them to see what real integrity looks like." There was a glint in his eye I was beginning to recognize. It was the look of a chess master positioning his pieces for checkmate. He asked me about Ethan's company. I told him the name of the mid-level investment firm where Ethan worked. Mr. Harrison just nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression on his face. "H&H Financial has a working relationship with them," he said cryptically. "We're on the other side of a big merger deal they're involved in." Interesting. That was a detail I filed away. Felt important. Everything was top tier. A 10-piece band, a celebrity chef designing the menu, a floral designer who created breathtaking installations that looked like something out of a fairy tale. Clara's dress was a custom-made masterpiece. I was fitted for a bespoke tuxedo. It was surreal. Part of me, the part that was still that little boy in the corner, felt a constant, nagging sense of imposter syndrome. I didn't deserve all this. But every time I felt that doubt, Clara or her parents would be there. Mrs. Harrison would loop her arm through mine during a cake tasting and say, "Joshua, you have a light in your eyes I haven't seen before. It suits you." Mr. Harrison would clap me on the shoulder after a meeting and say, "You're handling all this like a pro, son." They weren't just throwing a party. They were rebuilding my sense of self-worth, one luxurious, affirming detail at a time. The final piece of the plan was the most difficult. We had to invite my family. Not because we wanted them there, but because their presence was necessary for the plan to work. The invitation was sent, a thick, cream-colored card with gold leaf lettering that probably cost more than their dinner. It was an invitation to our wedding reception at the St. Regis at 7 p.m. on October 14th. We knew Ethan's ceremony was at 4 p.m., followed by a reception at a golf club in the suburbs. Our timing was deliberate. It gave them a window to come and gloat, and we were counting on them taking it. 2 weeks before the wedding, the RSVP card came back in the mail. "Richard, Eleanor, and Ethan +1 will not be attending." They hadn't even bothered to use Ethan's name. I was just Joshua's brother. Underneath the checked "no" box, my mother had scrawled a note in her loopy handwriting. "So sorry, we'll be busy at a real wedding. Hope you have fun." I showed it to Clara. She just smiled. "Perfect," she said. They took the bait. The day arrived. October 14th. I woke up in a suite at the St. Regis feeling a strange mixture of terror and exhilaration. I stood by the window, looking down at the city waking up below, the bespoke tuxedo hanging on the wardrobe door. This was it. Our ceremony was a private affair, held in the hotel's rooftop garden in the early afternoon. Just us, the Harrisons, my best man Michael, and Clara's maid of honor. It was perfect. Standing there, saying my vows to Clara with the skyline as our witness, I felt a profound sense of peace. Whatever happened tonight, I had already won. I had her. The reception was set to begin at 7. By 6:45, the grand ballroom was already humming with activity. It was breathtaking. Towering floral arrangements, crystal chandeliers sparkling like captive constellations, and the low, elegant murmur of 300 guests mingling over champagne and oysters. The 10-piece band was playing soft jazz. It was a world away from the community center halls and golf club reception rooms I was used to. At 7:15, right on schedule, the hotel concierge spoke softly into his wrist communicator. I saw Evelyn, our planner, nod from across the room. She gave me a subtle thumbs up. "They're here," she murmured as she passed. I took a deep breath and squeezed Clara's hand. We were standing near the entrance, greeting guests. We positioned ourselves so we would have a clear view of their arrival. And then they walked in. It was like watching a scene from a movie where characters from two different films accidentally wander onto the wrong set. My father was in an ill-fitting beige suit. My mother was wearing a bright fuchsia dress that was too tight and too loud for the elegant affair. And Ethan and Sophia, they looked like they'd just come from, well, a wedding at a suburban golf club. His suit was rumpled, and Sophia's bridesmaid-style dress, while expensive, looked garish and out of place among the sea of designer gowns and black ties. They stopped dead just inside the doorway. I watched their faces as they took in the scene. Their smug, mocking expressions melted away, replaced by a slack-jawed, wide-eyed disbelief. They scanned the room, their eyes moving from the soaring ceilings to the cascades of orchids, from the ice sculptures to the sheer number of exquisitely dressed guests. This wasn't a backyard barbecue. This wasn't a little event. This was a spectacle of wealth and class they couldn't even comprehend. My mother's hand went to her mouth. My father's face turned a blotchy red. Sophia's perfect smile was gone, replaced by a twisted mask of envy and confusion. But the best reaction was Ethan's. He looked like he'd been punched in the gut. His eyes, wide with shock, finally found me. He saw me standing there, relaxed and smiling in my perfectly tailored tuxedo, my beautiful wife on my arm, looking like we belonged there. Because we did. Slowly, like four magnets being pulled against their will, they began to walk toward us. The murmur of conversation around us died down as people noticed the oddly dressed newcomers and the palpable tension in the air. "Joshua," my mother stammered, her eyes darting around nervously. What is all this?" "It's my wedding reception, Mom," I said, my voice calm and pleasant. "I'm so glad you could make it." "But how?" my father sputtered, gesturing vaguely at the room. "Who paid for?" "We did," Clara said, her voice like honey-coated steel. "We're so happy you could come to celebrate with us. Richard, Eleanor." She nodded at them, a queen acknowledging her less-than-loyal subjects. Then her eyes landed on Sophia. "And you must be the other bride. Congratulations." The way she said "other bride" was a masterpiece of subtle dismissal. Sophia flinched as if she'd been slapped. Ethan finally found his voice. "What is this, Josh?" he hissed, his voice low and furious. "Some kind of joke? Where did you get the money for this? Did you win the lottery?" "Something like that," I said with a small smile. "I married the right woman." Right on cue, the band leader tapped his microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. It is my great honor to introduce the father of the bride, for a toast to the happy couple." Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Robert Harrison. And that's when the floor truly dropped out from under them. The band leader's voice boomed through the ballroom's state-of-the-art sound system. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome for the father of the bride, the chairman and CEO of H&H Financial Group, Mr. Robert Harrison. A wave of applause swept through the room. But I wasn't watching the stage. My eyes were locked on my brother. The color drained from Ethan's face. It literally vanished, leaving him a pasty, sickly white. His jaw went slack. Sophia, standing next to him, let out a tiny, strangled gasp. Her eyes darted from Mr. Harrison, who was now smiling warmly from the stage, to me and back again. The fake tan and diamond confidence she wore like armor had evaporated, revealing the raw, panicked greed beneath. H&H Financial Group. The company wasn't just a name to Ethan. It was his entire world. H&H was the titan on the other side of the big merger deal his small firm was desperately trying to close. Mr. Harrison wasn't just a CEO. He was the CEO. The man whose approval Ethan had been brown-nosing and scheming to get for the better part of a year. The man who held Ethan's coveted promotion, his massive salary increase, his entire future, in the palm of his hand. And he had just been introduced as my father-in-law. Mr. Harrison began to speak, his voice filled with warmth and genuine emotion. He talked about Clara, his wonderful daughter. Then he turned his attention to me. And then there's Joshua, he said, his eyes finding me in the crowd. He smiled. I've said it before, and I'll say it again tonight in front of all of you. There is nothing in this world I respect more than a self-made man. A man of integrity, talent, and quiet strength. A man who, despite facing obstacles that would have broken others, built a life and a career on his own terms. Joshua is that man. And I am the proudest father-in-law on the planet to welcome him into our family. The room erupted in another round of heartfelt applause. It was a perfect, beautiful speech. But for my family, every word was a hammer blow. Obstacles that would have broken others. They were the obstacles. Built a life on his own terms. Because they gave him no other choice. Ethan was shaking. I could see it from across the room. He turned to Sophia, his face a mask of pure fury. You knew about this? He spat. His voice a harsh whisper that still carried in the stunned silence around them. Knew about what? She hissed back, her eyes wide with panic. How could I know? You told me he was a nobody, a broke loser. This was your job. You were supposed to find out about them. He snarled. My promotion. My entire career. You've ruined everything. I ruined it? Sophia's voice rose to a shriek. You're the one who's been lying to your bosses, pretending you have some in with the H&H deal. You're a fraud. Ethan, a fraud living off your parents' credit cards. It was a complete and utter meltdown. In the middle of my wedding reception, in front of 300 of the city's most influential people, in front of his CEO, my father tried to grab Ethan's arm. Son, not here. Ethan shook him off violently. Don't touch me. This is all your fault. You told me he was nothing. You told me to ignore him. The spell was broken. Hotel security, discreet but firm, began to move toward them. Guests were staring, whispering. The beautiful, perfect evening had been momentarily shattered by their ugly, pathetic drama. But as I looked at the wreckage of their own making, I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel satisfaction. I just felt free. The weight of their judgment, the lifetime of their comparisons, it all just vanished. They had no more power over me. This is the moment that changed everything, the moment I finally took back control of my own life. Thank you for sticking with me this far. You are amazing. If you would, please help me out by liking this video and commenting the number 1 down below, just so I know you made it here with me. It doesn't just help more people find this story. It lets me know that my experiences mean something to someone out there. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to keep sharing the rest of this journey. The security guards were professionals. There was no shouting, no struggle. They simply surrounded my family, their calm, imposing presence creating a bubble of authority. With quiet words and firm gestures, They escorted the four of them out of the ballroom through a side exit. The whole incident took less than 2 minutes. As the doors swung shut behind them, a collective sigh of relief seemed to pass through the room. The band, after a nod from Evelyn, smoothly transitioned back into a cheerful melody. The party continued, but I knew it wasn't over. About 10 minutes later, my best man, Michael, leaned in. "There in the lobby," he whispered. "Your parents are asking to speak with you. Alone." Clara squeezed my hand. "You don't have to." "I know," I said, "but I need to. For me." I kissed her forehead and followed Michael out of the ballroom. I found them huddled near a service corridor, away from the main flow of the hotel lobby. The fight had gone out of them. They just looked small and defeated. My mother's makeup was smeared from crying. My father's face was ashen. Ethan and Sophia were gone, presumably having stormed off in separate directions. As soon as they saw me, my mother rushed forward. "Joshua! Oh, Joshua, thank God. We are so sorry." My father nodded vigorously. "A complete misunderstanding, son. We had no idea. Harrison, the CEO of H&H, why didn't you tell us?" The question was so absurd, so completely devoid of self-awareness, that I almost laughed. "Tell you?" I asked, my voice dangerously level. "Why would I? So you could try to use me? So you could finally pretend to be proud of me because I married into money and power?" No, it's not like that," Eleanor sobbed, reaching for my arm. I stepped back, and she flinched as if I'd struck her. "We've always been proud of you, Joshua. Always. We have a funny way of showing it." It was the most pathetic lie I had ever heard. All the years of neglect, of being told I wasn't good enough, of having my dreams dismissed and my accomplishments ignored. All of it was supposed to be erased by this one, desperate, last-ditch lie. "No," I said, and the word was as solid and unmovable as a granite wall. "You have never been proud of me. You were proud of Ethan. You were proud of the idea of him. You invested everything in him, and you treated me like a rounding error in the family budget." "That's not fair," my father mumbled, his eyes on the floor. "Fair?" I let out a short, sharp laugh. "You want to talk about fair? Was it fair when you gave him my Lego set? Was it fair when you dismissed my grades? Was it fair when you took my college fund and told me my future was a waste of money? Was it fair when you conspired with him to ruin my wedding day?" They had no answer. They just stood there, staring at me, the truth finally laid bare between us. "You came here tonight for one reason," I continued, my voice cold and clear. "You came here to mock me. You came to see my little event and feel superior. You wanted to confirm one last time that you'd backed the right son. But you miscalculated. You didn't bet on the wrong horse. You just never realized there was another horse in the race." I looked from my mother's tear-streaked face to my father's defeated slump. I felt nothing. No anger, no pity, no love. Just a vast, quiet emptiness. The emotional hold they'd had on me for 29 years was finally, completely broken. "Today is my wedding day," I said, my voice softening slightly. "Not for them, but for me. It is the first day of my new life with my new family. A family that loves and respects me for who I am, not for what I can do for them. And I will not allow you to cast your shadow over it for one more second." I turned to walk away. "Joshua, wait!" my mother cried out, her voice desperate. "What do we do now?" I stopped, but I didn't turn around. "That is no longer my concern," I said over my shoulder. "I suggest you go and enjoy the rest of Ethan's wedding." And then I walked back into the light and noise and warmth of my party, leaving them behind in the dim, quiet corridor. I never looked back. The weeks following the wedding were the happiest of my life. Clara and I went on our honeymoon to Italy, a trip paid for by Mr. Harrison as a wedding gift. For 2 weeks, we forgot everything. We ate pasta, drank wine, and got lost in ancient cobblestone streets. There were no phone calls, no emails, no family drama. It was just us. I felt like I could finally breathe. When we returned, reality slowly began to trickle back in. But it was a new reality. We moved into a beautiful new home that we'd bought together. I was still working at my same job, but something had shifted. The imposter syndrome was gone. I walked into work with a new confidence, a new sense of my own worth. News from my old family came in fragments, mostly through my Uncle David. He called me about a month after the wedding, his voice low and hesitant. "Josh, it's your Uncle David. I just wanted to say congratulations. I'm sorry I wasn't there." "It's okay, Uncle David," I said, and I meant it. He had always been caught in the middle, a decent man who was too timid to stand up to my father. "How are you?" "I'm all right. Listen, I thought you should know. Things are bad." He told me everything. Ethan's public meltdown in front of his CEO had been catastrophic. He was fired the following Monday for gross unprofessionalism and conduct unbecoming of the firm. The merger his company had been banking on fell through, in no small part because H&H Financial pulled their support, citing concerns about the partner firm's internal stability. Ethan had become a pariah in his field overnight. Sophia, seeing her meal ticket go up in flames, had called off the wedding the day after the reception. The massive diamond ring was returned, and she had completely vanished from their lives. The divorce from a marriage that never was swift and brutal. But then, Uncle David told me the part one never knew. The final, ugly twist of the knife. "Your parents are a wreck, Josh," he said, his voice heavy with sadness. "It's not just about Ethan's job. It's the money." "What money?" I asked. "The wedding," he said. "Ethan's wedding. They paid for all of it. The golf club, the designer dress, everything. It was close to $50,000. I was stunned. "Where did they get that kind of money?" "They don't have it." There was a long pause on the line. "They took out a second mortgage on the house," he said quietly. They told me it was an investment. Sophia's father owns those car dealerships. They thought if they threw a lavish wedding it would impress her family, that it would lead to business opportunities, maybe even help with their retirement. They were betting everything on Ethan marrying into that family. The cold, sickening truth of it settled over me. It was never about love. It was never even about simple favoritism. It was a financial transaction. They saw Ethan as their prize stock, and I was the dud they wrote off. They hadn't just emotionally bankrupted me. They had literally bankrupted themselves for him. All that talk about not having a cent for my college fund, it was all a lie. They had the money, they just chose to gamble it on the wrong son. It was the final piece of the puzzle, the one that explained the sheer desperation and cruelty of their actions. They weren't just trying to hurt me. They were trying to protect their investment. Life moved on. My life, at least. A few months after the honeymoon, Mr. Harrison called me into his office. Not as his son-in-law, but as Joshua, the software engineer. He had heard about a complex data integration project I had successfully led at my company. H&H Financial was facing a similar challenge on a much larger scale. "I want you to lead the project," he said, his tone all business. "Not as a favor. You'll interview with my CTO and my board. If they agree you're the best person for the job, I want to offer you a senior position here. The salary will be commensurate with the responsibility. But you have to earn it." It was the greatest challenge of my career, and the greatest opportunity. For the next month, I prepared relentlessly. I went through 3 rounds of grueling technical interviews. I presented my proposal to a boardroom full of executives who did not care that I was married to the CEO's daughter. They cared about results. And in the end, I got the job. I earned it. Walking through the doors of H&H Financial on my first day was a surreal experience. I wasn't just Clara's husband anymore. I was a respected member of the team, leading a project that was critical to the company's future. For the first time, my professional and personal lives were in harmony. I was building a future with the family that had chosen me. One evening, about a year after the wedding, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Joshua." The voice was thin, reedy. Took me a moment to place it. It was my mother. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice flat. We need your help," she stammered. "Your father's health isn't good, the medical bills. We're behind on the mortgage payments. They're talking about foreclosure." I listened, but I felt nothing. It was like hearing a story about strangers. And Ethan, she continued, her voice breaking, he can't find a job. No one will hire him. He's living in the basement. If you could just talk to your father-in-law, maybe he could put in a good word, help him get back on his feet. The audacity of it was breathtaking. After everything they had done, after trying to destroy me, they were now coming to me for a handout. They wanted me to use the very connections they had mocked me for to save the son they had chosen over me. I let the silence stretch out, long and uncomfortable. No, I said finally. What? She whispered, as if she couldn't have heard me correctly. No, I repeated, my voice clear and calm. I will not talk to Robert. I will not give you money. The choices you made, the investment you placed in Ethan, those are your burdens to bear. You made your bed. Now you have to lie in it. I heard a strangled sob on the other end of the line. But I wasn't finished. You are my biological parents, I said. That is a fact of nature. But you are not my family. My family is here with me. My life is here. And you are no longer a part of it. And with that, I hung up the phone. I blocked the number. I felt no guilt, no anger, no sadness. Just the quiet, clean finality of a door being closed for the last time. I was finally, truly free. It's been 5 years since that day. Clara and I are happier than I ever thought possible. We have a daughter now, a beautiful little girl with her mother's eyes and my quiet curiosity. My office at H&H has a window that overlooks the city, and sometimes I find myself just staring out, thinking about the long, twisted road that brought me here. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison are the most incredible grandparents a child could ask for. Our home is always filled with laughter and love, the kind of warmth I used to read about in books and think was pure fiction. I found my family, or maybe they found me. I heard through my uncle that my parents eventually lost the house. They moved into a small rental apartment in a less desirable part of town. Ethan is still living with them, working a series of dead-end jobs. I don't hate them. I don't wish them ill. I simply don't think about them. They are characters in a story from a life that no longer belongs to me. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Clara hadn't proposed to me, if the Harrisons hadn't accepted me, if my family's cruelty hadn't pushed me to that breaking point. Maybe I'd still be in that orbit, silently circling my brother's sun, hoping for a stray beam of light. But life has a funny way of showing you that sometimes the most painful endings are just the beginning of your real story. My worth was never tied to my family's approval. It was inside me all along. I just needed the right people to help me see it. The most important lesson I learned is that family isn't about the blood you share. It's about the people who show up for you, the people who lift you up, the people who choose you no matter what. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with you in some way. Have you ever had to find your own family, the one that wasn't given to you by birth? Share your own story in the comments below. I read every one. And please don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss what I share next. Take care.